Awesome. All right. All right, guys. All right. I think we are live on Facebook. Wait, no. You think we are? So yeah, guys, this is something that was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago, and through a total comedy of errors, it just didn't end up happening. And in a few minutes, hopefully, if everything goes well, I am going to be joined live here by Dan DeHart, the owner of Grander Rum. We've been trying for a long time to get this thing going, and yeah, hopefully he checks in and we have some volume and we do some stuff here. Yeah. It's, should be in another minute or so that hopefully Dan is joining us. I didn't promote this one because last time I did and things got all wonky on us. So it's kind of a surprise. You might be getting the notification that we are here. Oh yeah, there we are. So all right. Have to turn down the volume so I don't listen to myself in my other ear. Yeah, hopefully Dan will be checking in with us shortly. We're going to be tasting through and talking about, oh, there we go. Awesome. Hey, Dan.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. We finally made it.
Yeah, we finally got it done. Yeah, it's first of all, thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
because I know you don't do a lot of these.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And yeah, I'm just testing my speakers here.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, I think we got it. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. We finally got together. And I wanted to tell the story. A couple weeks ago when we couldn't make this work, I had told the people who were gonna tune in like that I would save the story. And really what happened was I was on this computer 2 days before we were supposed to do this meeting, and we had a Zoom meeting with our web people. Everything worked fine. We're getting ready to go live. It's not recognizing that we have a microphone. So I call my boss in a panic. He runs out, gets a microphone. We get to here, plug it in, the microphone works. Now it's not recognizing that it has a camera. And I was in a total panic. And so that's why we weren't here 2 weeks ago, guys. I told him I would share that story. So thank you again for doing this. I looked up in podcasts. I know you don't do a lot of these, or it doesn't seem like there's a lot of podcast stuff of you out there.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I mean, I've done a few of them, but I haven't. I wouldn't say I have done a lot of them. So, and but I'm excited to be here today with you to do this, and look forward to it.
So I know you just got back from Panama. How was it down there?
Good. I've been back now for several weeks. All good. We're wrapping up a production bottling of some more product. So it's knock on wood, everything looks good. Just waiting for it to get on a ship and head up to the States.
Awesome. So I wanted to start out because to me, I mean, you are this brand. What I love about it is it's not Constellation, Diageo, Pernod, somebody who created a fake backstory and hired a writer to come up with, a recipe
Right,
found on
right.
a pirate ship. Like it's a real person sort of behind it. And the brand is you. So, like you are interesting because you grew up in the heart of bourbon country,
Yep.
Kentucky. You go to school in the heart of college basketball at UK. Like, what was that like? What was it like around then? And who was coaching UK at that time?
Oh gosh. So yeah, well, yeah. So when I went, it was before the Patino era. We had my gosh, feel like a fool. I can't think of the guy. Right before, oh gosh, I can picture him in my face. I mean, he kind of struggled on the court and off the court, actually. Oh, what was his name? Rex Chapman played for him.
Oh
I
yeah,
do
yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
that.
Was it Tubby?
No, no, way before Tubby.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. All right, hold on
It's
here.
going to be impossible to go to UK and not get caught up in college basketball sort of
Oh yeah,
madness.
no, it's yeah. I mean, it is, and I went to every game I could at Rupp Arena. It was fabulous. Unfortunately, when I was there, we didn't have a national championship, um, but I still went to every game. I mean, it was just the highlight going to the games and seeing the tradition. I mean, there's just a lot of obviously love for it. I mean, growing up in Kentucky, you don't have professional sports,
Right, right.
so there's a lot of focus on college, whether it's Louisville or Kentucky, and you're usually one or the other. And I grew up in Louisville,
Wow.
but Kentucky fan, and actually I had a lot of friends that went to Kentucky from Louisville that were Louisville fans. So but all is good. I mean, everyone, it's all good fun, and so we get along really well. Um, but I also loved going to the football games as well. And the perfect football day at Kentucky would be in October when Keeneland, which is a racetrack in Lexington, smaller than Churchill Downs. They only run twice a year, spring and fall, and usually it's for, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks per season, and that's it. No other running. But during football season, if you could go to the races during the day and then football game at night, it couldn't get much better than
Wow.
that. And of course, there was always plenty of bourbon to go around
So
as
speaking of that,
well.
yeah, you grew up a bourbon guy. What were your bourbons of choice kind of
Uh,
back then?
but growing up or
Yeah, yeah,
Jim Beam,
yeah.
it was, I didn't have a lot of money, so it was, and I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring you, but I've got to find out who my coach was when I was there because it's really bugging me. Um, so, but yeah, it was, I mean, this is '80s, right? So this, bourbon was not at all a big thing
Hmm.
then. In fact, I think in the '70s and even early '80s, the distilleries really struggled to even move the product.
Hmm.
So you just had their normal staple brands of Wild Turkey, Jim Beam, Old Forester,
Hmm.
I mean that was pretty much it. And honestly, I don't even think Four Roses was yet sold in the States. I think they were still mainly export.
Yeah, I think there was still blended whiskey here in America at that
Yeah, I
point.
mean yeah. So it was a very different time. I would say the high end bourbons at that time were either Maker's Mark. I mean that, and just their standard Maker's Mark. That's all they had, and that was considered, the creme of
Yeah,
the
the
top.
luxury.
And also, Blanton's came out in the '80s,
Hmm.
so that kind of really changed everything as well, for a lot of reasons. But it's Eddie Sutton. don't know if you even remember that guy.
Yeah, that's why he's so tough to remember.
Eddie Sutton. Yeah. Yeah, he was there. Anyhow, but yeah, so I mean, bourbon back then was a whole different animal than what it is today. And but yeah, that was yeah, Jim Beam was typically what I drank, and it was just, it was, you know, the cheaper brand. And of course, in school, I think, in school today, you seem to have more college kids throwing out more money, but
Right. Yeah.
uh, so, but yeah, no, I mean, I loved it. I still have tons of family there. Get back there a lot of extended family. So, I mean, it's very much part of who I am. And in fact, particularly if you grow up in Louisville, I mean, you will know people working in the industry as well. And Brown Forman is a huge employer there. Of course, having other distilleries. And so you're going to either be related to some people that work there or work in one of those areas, or you know people as well, which was my case. I had some relatives and friends that worked in the industry, but not me. I didn't until now.
Yeah. So you did have a little familiarity, at least with the business and the industry.
Yeah, I did. And I, so I have some really good friends that are intimately involved in Heaven Hill. My cousin also worked with Brown Forman quite a bit. So actually, you may know, I don't know, she's really active in the bourbon scene. Peggy Stevens is her name, but you may not know that name. But anyhow, she's
I know the name.
Okay. So yeah, I certainly, I think I knew, and I mean, I didn't know the intimate details. Of course, I went to most all the distilleries growing up. It was always a fun field trip to do and see. And but as you know, I mean, it's the industry is a lot more complicated and challenging than just what it looks like on face value.
So you grew up a bourbon guy, and as I read the legend, you go on a boat trip, and then this bottle shows up.
That's right. Exactly. Good homework. Yeah. So my wife and I actually would bareboat, rent sailboats down in the Caribbean, and rent our own boat. And usually the boat would always have a bottle of rum on there, unopened. I mean, it's kind of a little welcome gift. And we just, of course, like everyone, we always mixed it into something sweet and drank it like that. But it was, that particular bottle, I remember halfway through the trip, I was smelling it, and it seemed a little different than the typical swell that they gave you to mix in. And I tried it neat and was like, oh, wow, okay, hold on. What is this? And it really, I guess, caught me off guard. And because we had been mixing it up to that point, and I drank it neat, and I was like, wow, I actually enjoy this. It's nice. And so that kind of, I think, opened that little door from being just the typical, uneducated consumer of, it's Captain Morgan or like a spice rum or a cheap rum that, has to be mixed and that's it.
Yep.
But it opened that door to, oh, okay, hold on here. There's a whole nother world of rum out there that I'm not aware of. And I want to learn more about it because this really caught me off guard. And particularly with the puzzlers, I realized, hey, I can drink this neat if I like, or over ice, or I can make it in a cocktail, which is really how I drink bourbon. And just depending on what my mood is, it's
depends on
either neat over ice, a little water, or a cocktail. And so it was at that point that I realized there's something to be explored, which is what I did.
Yeah, and I had never had it until I read that story about you, and I went out and grabbed a bottle, and it really, the oak presence is really big. So was that like an aha moment of not only I like rum, but now I want to get in the rum business? Like, were you
I,
planning
w-
on getting into
it,
spirits business or?
I think, so at good question. And so it was an aha moment for the rum category in general for me. But honestly, uh, the question of it wasn't an aha moment of, oh, okay, I want to do this in rum. But the question around of getting into the business had already been lurking in the back of my mind at that stage, uh, in a very faint way. Um, and it wasn't until I moved back to Kentucky. My family and we moved back in I guess around 2002, 2003. And it wasn't until that point that I really started thinking about getting into the business. And at that stage, it was still going to be bourbon. And in fact, I had already contacted distilleries and met with them and was really getting close to maybe doing something. But the timing wasn't right for me. And so my family and I, we actually moved down to Florida. It was a job opportunity I was recruited after, and we came down here and did it. But that, whole thought, I mean, the planning process, I spent a lot of free time really putting pen to paper, so to speak, thinking about that. And but as I continued to think more about it, and at the same time in tandem, as I continued to explore more about rum and learn about rum, I really became more fascinated with rum. And don't get me wrong, I still love my bourbon, still drink bourbon, but I came really intrigued from the premise of I mean, rum's such a diverse spirit, and everyone can make the argument whiskey's diverse, et cetera, et cetera. But I find rum to be so incredibly diverse because of you have different countries doing different things, and you can get and yield so many different taste profiles. Some profiles you're going to like, some profiles you're not. I mean, but there's a rum out there for everyone. Someone's going to find something they really like, and I think it's that diverse. And I don't think you can say that for some of the other categories. And as I began to understand more about rum, and also recognizing in the U.S., I did a lot of I guess research on data, not to bore the conversation or, but it was kind of telling. So there's actually an organization called Discus out there, and they actually every year in February they create a report for the prior year that shows you really the spirits industry, and they break it down by category, and then within each category, let's say like whiskeys or bourbon whiskeys, they break it down further and say there's a value segment, a premium, high end, and super. And those those segments are really based on price point. I mean, there's nothing more to it. But what I found interesting is if you did a snapshot of all the categories, and this is early, I guess maybe around 2010. Don't shoot me if I'm off a couple of years, but just a rough idea. If you took vodka, tequila, scotch, bourbon, and you broke down each of those categories, like the value up to super premium, usually for each category in the super premium, meaning of all spirits, let's say all bourbon sold in the US, roughly 8% of all bourbon was super premium. I think it's actually higher now, but I'm guessing 8%. But usually between all the categories, it was between 8 and 15% is what I found. So, but if you look at rum, where do you think rum stood at in terms of the amount of super premium?
Probably less than 5.
Yeah, I mean, even way less than that. It was less than 2%. It was, I think, around 1%. But rum, in terms of volume, was actually one of the largest.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning that it was mostly unaged or spice rums, not a lot of aged stuff.
Right.
And so that was really interesting to me. And I realized at that point that most of America, I think consumers are still just very much unaware of this rum world, particularly around aged rum. And so for me, getting into the category or wanting to do something was not just, hey, I really like this category, and I think there's something there. I felt for an opportunity within the U.S. that it was just really prime time to try to do something. Fast forward, I mean, rum has grown, and particularly the higher end categories, the aged rum has grown. I think more consumers are aware of it. More consumers are interested in it, but, and you probably know better than anybody with your store, that it still is a slow burner. So it hasn't taken off like tequila or even bourbon. It's growing, but it's still way down in terms of, I think, I guess, consumer understanding or acceptance at this stage.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is, like you said, there's a lot of diversity in rum,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of murky landscapes. And we talked about that when we
Yeah,
first met, of the perception that all rum has to be sweet, or that
yeah,
every spiced rum is Captain Morgan. Like, there's a lot of lack of consumer education out there,
yeah,
that not
yeah. And
every
you're
rum is a sugar bomb, which is
uh,
what I love about yours. Um, that,
yeah,
but
no,
there is a weird landscape of some countries adding juice or wine, or
yeah,
adding sugars and dosage and things. So yeah, I think that's
no,
part of the consumer problem, is people don't fully know how to navigate that landscape, which is what I try to do here in the store, is
yeah.
kind of direct people, especially, like, I'm diabetic, so I try to avoid anything with sugar, which
Right.
again is what
Yeah,
drew
I remember
me
that.
to your product, of the no
Well,
sugar.
and and I think you're spot on. I think not only is the category of rum so diverse, as I mentioned out, which I think is a positive, but it's also a hindrance, because for someone coming in, it only takes one rum they try, and it's like
Yeah.
foul, or it's just not their rum, and then they walk away.
Mhm.
And I can understand that. So I think you get the rums that are very sweet, which I don't enjoy, but there are people that do enjoy that,
Mhm.
which all every palate is different. But then you have the real funky rums that, again, some people love, and some people, it's not for them. Or even agricole,
Yep.
um, which is very distinctive. So whereas my rum, I think, is a little bit more, I would say, easier on the palate, uh, because the flavors are going to be, I think, much more recognizable,
Mhm.
and embracing, versus something that's just out in left field of bam.
Mhm.
um, and but yeah, I think you're right. I think that's part of the rum challenge, is a lot of people don't know where to go. But I think visiting stores like what you have, or even bars that have a good diverse set of rum, someone can help them based on what they think they like or not, and they can start off and can then educate, and then I think they'll quickly fall in love with it.
So, I mean, let's talk about your rum. It's from Panama. How did you end up in Panama with one of the biggest names in the world of rum, Don Pancho?
Yeah. Um, so it's interesting. So when I decided to get into this business, I actually had not made up my mind if I was going to find a distillery and partner with, or do a micro distillery, which was really beginning to take foot in America. I mean,
Mhm.
it still is, but again, I'm going back 10 years.
Right.
And so I I I I loved the idea of having my own distillery and the stills, and just there's a lot of neat things about that. But before making a decision, I really wanted to educate myself. So I actually signed up for a course back in Louisville, Kentucky. It's called Moonshine University.
I did Moonshine University.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah, I did the executive bourbon steward course there.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. So I did the more intense version of it,
Mhm.
and so you're not going to come out an expert in distilling or anything
Right,
like
right.
that, but you're going to come out with a far more educated understanding of the business, um, and and giving you enough education really to then decide what path or if you're going to do it. I mean, there were a lot of people in that class that were getting ready to build their micro distillery, or they had just built the micro distillery, um, and so it was a really good educative informing session. So I took that and I decided that I wanted to find a distillery to work with, mainly because, well, there's a lot of capital intensive funding that has to go behind uh, building out a micro distillery. But secondly, also, I mean, and I felt like I have enough, technical knowledge to distill.
Mhm.
I don't think that would be a problem for me, but, and I think you would appreciate it, that it takes a lot of experience. There's an artistic side of it, and I think there's a lot of experience needed in order to, you can distill stuff, but how good is it going to be? And I think
Mhm.
that that experience level. So, which obviously I would have to hire that experience level to come in and help me, or I can fumble through it, but then it may take 10 years before I figure
Right.
it out.
Yep, yep.
So I decided to find a distillery that uh, would be a good collaborative partner for me. And so, very long way to answer your question, long winded, but maybe that's why I don't get asked to do these podcasts.
No, I'm geeky. I love every little nuance and detail. My customers are super geeky and they love those. So it
so
just
I actually, truth be told, I actually hired a rum consultant, believe it or not. And there was this man I met, and what he had a lot of experience in the rum industry, but also he had a lot of connections to distilleries. And so we sat down and I explained to him what I was looking for, what I wanted to do. And so he provided a lot of samples from different distilleries. We visited several distilleries, and and we ended up, or actually, I ended up going down to Panama through an introduction. This person, and we sat down, and I met Don Pancho and his business partner Carlos Escobar, and we sat down and I explained to and Don Pancho, by the way, is the nicest, generous man. Made our introductions, but I explained that at that point I was looking for a 7 to 8 year old rum. Um, I explained that I did not want to add anything to it. I didn't want to add coloring, sugar to it, and um, we
wasn't
sat
he
down.
blown away by the fact that you didn't want to add sugar and
Yeah, he was a bit taken back by that. In fact, I his comment was, I don't understand, you Americans like sweet,
yeah.
uh, which there's a lot of truth to
Yes,
that.
yes.
But I told him, I explained to him I came from my bourbon background, and I think bourbon drinkers find bourbon to be plenty sweet. I mean, it's not sweet in the sense of confectionery or whatever, but it has some intrinsic sweetness that is part of that really comes out from the barrel.
Mhm.
And so I said there's a whole set of consumers out there that really want to focus on just the essence of the distillation, the aging. They don't want that added sweetness, and they don't like that added sweetness. And I really found myself to be in that category. Um, but yeah, he was a bit taken back by that, but intrigued as well. And then I told him that I wanted to bottle this at 90 proof or higher, which also was very intriguing to him because, again, 10 years ago, I mean, most rums on the shelf were 80 proof.
Yeah.
It was very unusual to find stuff north of that. I mean, it exists. I mean, you had 151, and you had some other interesting stuff out there. But I would say 90% of the shelf was 80 proof, if not higher. I mean, percentage wise. And again, I did that again based on my bourbon background, because a lot of the bourbons I drank were 90 proof or higher, and I don't mind the warmness of that alcohol. I don't mind it to have a little bit of heat going down. I don't want it to be fire.
Right, but sometimes you need that to balance the flavors and.
Yeah, and so, so they were very intrigued with what I wanted to do, and I tasted their rums, unadulterated, and I was very pleased with what I was tasting, and I really enjoyed learning from Don Pancho their process. I mean, obviously his backstory is he's Cuban,
yep.
And he learned his methods in the Cuban rum industry, and then he ended up in Panama. So he's very much a traditionalist, and I liked how what he was doing was something that he was formed by in Cuba, and doing that with his distillation and aging and in Panama. And then you have me, obviously formed by my impressions in Kentucky and bourbon, and I was bringing that bent to it. So I always tell people it's really this Grandeur is obviously a reflection of myself, but it also is a reflection of Don Pancho in the sense of, because he brought the base of Grandeur is what he made, but also there's tweaks and things I've done that are really a reflection of me. So it's really this Cuban Kentucky connection that ends up in Panama, creating this thing called Grandeur rum.
So do you actually call him Don Pancho, or do you call him by
Yeah.
his name?
No, Don Pancho. Everyone does. They all call him Don Pancho. Yeah, it's but Don Pancho speaks as much English as I speak Spanish. So Don Pancho's business partner, Carlos, is fluent in both. And so usually when we meet, we have Carlos there. But I have to tell you a short story. It's funny. One time I had to be down in Panama for work, and I don't know if I was picking up samples or what, but Carlos said he wasn't going to be in country. He was traveling. I said, that's fine. I said, Don Pancho and I can meet in his office. And I showed him, I said, I have Google Translate. We'll get through it. So we sat down in his office, and we said whatever Spanish I said to him and English he said, and that was a very short conversation. And then I broke out Google Translate, and I'm typing my stuff and showing him. And so we meet, adjourn, and I think 3 months later I was back there, and we're meeting in Don Pancho's office, and Carlos is there, and Don Pancho's talking to Carlos in Spanish, and Carlos says, Dan, Don Pancho wants me to convey to you that your Google Translate sucks. And that he has no idea what happened or transpired when we met last. I was like, oh, well, it's good to know.
That's great. That's great. So rum in Panama, what is the angel share down there?
Yeah. So it is, so evaporation is pretty interesting down there. So, I mean, as you know, it's a tropical climate, and I do everything in Panama. So Grandeur is 100% Panamanian. It's distilled, it's aged, and it's bottled. And we also do our finishes down in Panama. And we use the distillery, they grow their own sugar cane. Wow. So it's a molasses-based rum. But it's really nice because we don't have to worry about getting our molasses externally, and everything is done essentially under one roof. But in aging, and everything is aged in ex-bourbon barrels, which is not unusual in the rum world. But it certainly was a thing I liked from my background.
Independent stave?
No. Well, I do use independent stave quite a bit, but in terms of the age, I use independent stave for a lot of my finishes. But in terms of just our typical aging, if you walk through the warehouse, you're going to find barrels from many different distilleries in Kentucky. I would say the most barrels you're going to find are going to be probably Jim Beam, Heaven Hill, or Buffalo Trace barrels. But you'll find other stuff. And it's there's, which just shows you there's not a one-to-one relationship with a Kentucky distillery to source barrels, and which adds a lot of variables, by the way, when you're aging and you're trying to create and blend a product, because you have different barrels, potentially different char levels, with different mash bills in it. And then, of course, you have the warehouse effect, and so a lot of variations. But to your point, the angel share, year one typically can range from 10 to 12% loss in just the first year. Second year, and it actually reduces over time. Second year, typically, I mean, from the numbers I've seen, 6 to 8%, and then after that, it gradually goes down under 4%. And during the evaporation, we will lose alcohol more than water.
Wow.
So our ABV actually will drop. Versus in Kentucky, a lot of times it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So we will lose that alcohol and drop. And when I do finishes, my finishes are typically, I'll fill the barrel up, and I can easily lose 10% within 11 months, 10 months.
Wow.
And then I'll lose, I mean, it varies, but I mean, I'll definitely lose maybe a percentage of ABV during that time as well. But which leads into another thing, that what the rum world, not all distilleries, but a number of distilleries will do is cask consolidation. Mm-hmm. So and typically what they're trying to do is combat evaporation. And I don't know all the science behind it. I don't have the data. I just know this is what they do, and they do it to combat evaporation. But though after X amount of years, what they may do is, and they'll take the same lot, so to speak, same age, same everything, and just consolidate down maybe 10 barrels down to 7 barrels or whatever the number may be. I mean, don't quote me on that, but and so the belief is by doing that, you're reducing the effects of evaporation. Doesn't make entirely sense to me. I just know that's what they do.
As they say, people smarter than us, that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. The other
I think
thing,
that's a part of the economics that people don't always understand, is you start out with 7 barrels, but by the time you're ready to bottle, you got 5 left. Like,
the
amount of
losing
loss that goes in there is,
which is why the older the spirit, the more costly it's going to be. There's there's a lot, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's evaporation is a real thing.
mm-hmm.
I'm sure if someone could figure out how to capture that, they would. But it's but yeah, I mean, barrel wise, they don't have a cooperage or any coopers down there. So if they have an issue with the barrel, I mean, it's done. And which is a shame, because cooping, or what, I don't know what the trade name is, but that is a skill set that they're lacking in Panama, and have not invested in as well. Yeah, which is why I do buy a lot of barrels, particularly for my finishes, from independent stave, because they do inspect and repair all their barrels before they're shipped out, used barrels.
So with the finishing, and this is just something that came to me, but we talk about it a lot in bourbon. Like, there's a few reasons that people finish. And what finishing, people, you age it, and then when you're done aging it, you put it into another barrel for a little bit extended period of time. And I remember talking to Dave Peckerell, who only
Mhm.
wanted to finish things for a couple weeks. He just wanted to
Yeah.
smooth the edges off. And then my friend Amanda down at Virginia Distilling will finish things to actually add flavor. And then sometimes we feel like people are finishing whiskeys to mask inferior whiskeys.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is yours, you just want to smooth the rough edges? Or are you looking to add flavor from those finishing barrels?
So great question. So
It's obviously not
when,
covering up inferior rum because the rum is fantastic. So
yeah, well, thank you. Yeah. So so first of all, I'll talk about when we do finishes, what we're putting into those barrels. And right now I'm primarily putting 8-year-old, Grander 8-year-old in there. But at a higher, I mean, our Grander 8-year-old is bottled at 45%, but I am actually putting 8-year-old into those barrels at 55%, 110 proof. I originally did 65%, and so when I bottle single barrels, I do that cast strength, um, and so you would get 63, 64% ABV. And I do know, particularly in the bourbon world and rum world, people love that. But I also know that I think more people actually don't like that.
mhm.
And so I brought it down to 55%, because I still believe that's kind of a sweet spot. It still gives someone who wants a higher proof, they're going to get some essence that they really enjoy. And then someone who enjoys low proof, it's going to maybe stretch them a little bit, but it's not going to be, overly obnoxious for them as well. So every barrel that's filled for finishing, I approve all the rum, particularly as I do for all my 8-year-old and 12-year-old bottlings. But I'm actually doing it for the added a next layer of flavor. I'm doing it for the flavors, and so to me, and that's why I love finishes. I really do. And I honestly, I will get some complaints. I mean, I've had some finishes in there that have been in there a while, and I think a person who only loves rum and rum only may not enjoy it as much, because if it spent a lot of time in there, it may have picked up, in their opinion, too much
Yep.
of that barrel. And I understand that. I you know I kind of like it. So I but to each their own. Like I said, everyone has a different palate. So but typically my finishes are on it. Most of them that you can see out in the marketplace are between 10 and 11 months, which, I mean, for the bourbon world, that's a long time for
Right.
finishes. So, but I feel that for me, I'm investing a lot in these barrels,
Mhm.
and bringing them down to Panama. So I just don't. I'm doing a little bit more to bring in that flavor, and that's how I try to educate people on I call it the barrel series. I'm adding a new dimension of or new layer of flavor aromas to my rum, and so it's it's a lot of fun for me because I do like trying a lot of different stuff, and playing with it, and I find the rum to be very willing to accept these new barrels. So in terms of the flavors, I find to be very complementary, um, to these external barrels that I'm bringing in.
How often do you taste during the finish? And I ask because at home I play around with little 2-liter barrels and I'll, fill them up and then put something in there to age. And sometimes you taste it after, on a 2-liter, I might taste it in a month and a half and go like, oh, something's wrong here. And then
Yeah,
I'll put it in the closet and go back like in 4 months and go like, all right, this is great. And then think it's going to get better. And then I taste it again in a month and it's kind of dipped off. Like, do you track it all along like that and then decide like, all
yeah,
right, it's ready to go now? Or
yeah. I mean, I'm usually so I go down to Panama 4 times a year, and I'm tasting rums usually during those times.
Mhm.
Um, I I've kind of, for me, I guess maybe through trial and error, I've kind of felt that, particularly when I sell single barrels, the 10, 11 month mark is kind of a sweet spot for me. I feel like that's where I'm at. So I feel that's usually the window I want to be in. And also by using 8-year-old rum. I mean, when I first started, I did 12-year-old rum, which is wonderful, but also, it gets crazy expensive, particularly now, particularly after COVID. So I've gone to 8-year-old rum, which I love my 8-year-old rum, and it's great for it. And I think actually it's better because that 8-year-old rum, because of its youthfulness, does retain a lot more of its rum character than a 12-year-old rum, if that makes sense. It sounds really weird, but the 12-year-old rum has become softer. It's 12-year-old rum is beautiful and delicious, but it's become softer in a way that the barrels can quickly overtake it. Whereas the 8-year still has some backbone in it to, when you taste it, you're still, you can taste that 8-year-old, but also the beautiful flavors that this new barrel's bringing in as well. So, but yeah, I find that to be it. But listen, I've got stuff in there that I've had in the barrels, these finishing barrels, for over 3 years.
Wow. Wow.
Which is intense. And I've got I think the oldest one I've had, I think 3 years. I have some of my earliest barrels I bought were from Scotland, and I did a peated
Wow.
and a space side unpeated. And so I have 2 barrels or 1 barrel of each left, and they're still sitting in there. So not sure where it's going to go, but we'll see.
All right. Let's talk about the brand. And here we are, Grander. I have the 3 expressions that we carry. This is the 12 year.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's like what I have in my hand. So I'll join you.
So yeah, explain to people what Grander means, and then how we came upon this bottle. And I think of you every time I see this little.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That drove me nuts.
Actually, yeah. So you're gonna start to see. I've actually. This is a
shorten the label.
You see, I should have done it years ago. Yeah, I saw that when you brought it up. Like, there's another label that pops up. You just did that for me, didn't you? To do some more gray hairs. So Grander. Okay. So Grander actually is a moniker for a marlin fish weighing over 1,000 pounds. And I of course also, it's just Grander, you can say that. But for me, I chose that for a couple of reasons. The first one is marlin fish to me are the most beautiful fish in the ocean. I just love them. I think they're beautiful. And they just swim the oceans just in a magical way. And I love everything about them when I see them. But also the Grander, or not just Grander, but marlin, are independent. I mean, they don't swim around schools. I mean, they're out there in an independent sense. And that's what I'm all about. I'm independent. I mean, it's me, myself, and I doing this. It's not Diageo. So I love that independence, which for me it's a lot of fun because it allows me to do different stuff and be nimble and I can do stuff that I find to be very interesting, and if I want to try out new stuff. So they're beautiful, they're independent. You're going to find marlin fish typically in warmer waters, which just is obviously with rum. Rum is typically, not always. You got a great rum distiller up there in your state. So, but typically, you're going to find rum is traditionally from the warmer climates and waters, which is typically where you'll find marlins in most cases. And then of course it's a grander is the ultimate catch. I mean, for big game fishermen catching a 1,000-pound marlin, which only few will ever have the opportunity to do that, is just considered like the holy grail of fishing. And so pursuing that is really a life thing for people. And a couple granders have been caught in Panama. It actually is. They have really good fishing there. So that's really all behind the name. And it's, I just think it really reflects on what I'm doing, trying to create or craft something that's beautiful. I'm very independent in my approach and obviously my business. And something that's wonderful enough to be called grandeur.
I mean, that bottle looks like a trophy you would be given if you caught a 1,000-pound marlin. The bottle is just beautiful. How did you come?
Well, thank you.
Design? Or?
Yeah. So great question. I'm happy to share with what I did. I guess I had in my mind a vision of the brand, but I needed help to translate that into something physical. And so I actually worked with a small company in Austin, Texas called the Helms Workshop. I think it's Helms Group. And it was really interesting process. We kicked it off and they sent me a 12-page questionnaire. And it was, all the questions were basically emotionally driven questions around what I was trying to do with the brand. And I mean, it was really an interesting process. And so I went through and answered these 12 emotionally based questions, or not 12 pages worth of emotionally based questions. And then I guess about a month later, they came back with three kind of design offerings to me based on what they I guess obtained from my answers and this dialogue that we had. And the one that was, that ended up being this caught my eye because I wanted grandeur also to be something that looked like, this bottle's been around for a long time. It has like, I don't know if a vintage feel, but something that just really, is, classy, but still, strong in the sense of, that we could carry a name of grandeur, 1,000-pound marlin. Something you expect something big and strong, but also beautiful. So I was trying to encapsulate all that into really this bottle, which is where we ended up. And people love it. I mean, I love it too. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I think it's a really good communication tool for the brand as well. Just that the sides of the of the stuff doesn't work always, but we've overcome that.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. All right, so what can you tell me about the 12-year that we're sipping on?
Yeah, so the 12-year. So the 12-year is I love it for many reasons, and the taste to me is I call it the elegant expression of my group. I think the 12-year-old is I love sipping it neat as I'm doing right now, and I think you are as well. I think it's a beautiful rum to spend time with, and it's a rum though. It's not an in-your-face rum. It's a rum that you have to be patient with to really understand it and appreciate it, because the more time you spend with it, it begins to unveil and open itself up, and you really begin to appreciate the flavors and the aromas that are really working in there. If you're tasting a lot of other spirits and you come in and drink this, I don't think you're going to get this. I think it'd be harder to really understand what it's about. But if you pour it and spend time with it, I think you're going to be rewarded wonderfully by just the beautiful flavors, the warmness of it, and I don't know. I just love it for that. But I also love it because of the color.
Hmm.
Um, and I
Which I wanted to ask about because I have three expressions and I started lightest in color to darkest, but the 12 year
yeah
is kind of light in color for what I would think a 12 year would be
yeah
in that kind of heat.
exactly yeah no you're right. And so what it's funny because in the bourbon world, um, color usually equates to age as well. I mean, and so what's going on in bourbon, of course, just like rum, off distill, it's clear, it's like water, and visually. But when you go into the bourbon world, you're filling up brand new charred barrels that have never been used before. So every day it spins in that barrel, it's getting all the influence of that brand new charred barrel, and it's going to get darker, 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 darker. Rum would be the same case if we put rum into a brand new charred barrel. The same effect would have in terms of the color would happen, no doubt about it. But in the rum world, unlike the bourbon world, we can reuse those barrels over and over. And we can, and it actually doesn't have to be a bourbon barrel. It can be whatever you want.
Right.
And so we can use that barrel over and over. I mean, infinitely. I mean, obviously the barrel is going to break down, but so what happens is every time you fill up the barrel, the rum inside is going to pull from the actual wood. And so you dump it, fill it up again. Well, every time you do that, the wood is being used. It's being depleted. It's losing its character, really, in terms of color, flavors, aromas. And so the 12-year-old it's a small batch, but we're pulling from barrels that we've already used on average 4 to 5 times. So this is 12 years, but the color's light because of those barrels, the way they've been used. So the barrels are not able to give off that coloring that it did the first time. And so what you're left with is a barrel that's really approaching a neutral status. So you're going to get minimum influence of oak, and in terms of the flavors, even the nose, and you're going to get minimum influence from the color. And so it's really about the rum. It's still a wonderful vessel for maturing.
Yep.
But it's going to do it differently, as if the barrel was a fresh barrel. It would be a very different experience for it. Mm-hmm. And so for me, now the rum producers can add coloring to it. That's fully within the rule book.
Yep.
And you don't have to disclose that. So I could easily add color, make it really dark, because I've had, I remember particularly in the early days, I had people come in and go, no way, I want a dark rum, mm-hmm. which dark rum to me is it's a really meaningless term.
Right.
Or I want an older rum, an age rum. So the color does throw people off, and I get it, because again, it's the only other spirit I know that you can find like this is you'll sometimes find scotches, old Scotch,
right.
and maybe in your store as well, that are very pale, mm-hmm. and that are maybe 20 years of age, and for similar reasons.
Yeah, I think this is the truest rum flavor out of the lineup, because again, you're not getting as much of that barrel influence. And what I love about it is it's the kind of spirit that I could sit and smell for 20 minutes, because I feel like every time my nose gets in there, I'm picking up a different aroma. And every time I taste it, I'm getting something a little bit different. Some of the vanilla, but then some of the tropical banana, pineapple flavors that are in there. And yeah, it's a fantastic rum. And it is. It's elegant. It's stylish. It's just a beautiful, beautiful rum.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
My favorite of the lineup, the next one, is the
rye
barrel series, finished in rye barrels. This is the first one I ever tried. I think I read about this in an article, of great rums that you have to try. And I called my sales rep and I said, do you have this? I need to try this. And I was instantly in love with the brand from the moment I tasted this.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That makes me really happy. And the rye finish actually was the very first finish I did. And I'm like you. I love that particular product. I love the rye elements playing with the subtle sweetness of the rum. I find it to be a beautiful combination. Those yeah, so that was my first barrel series ever. And I contacted my friends at Heaven Hill to ask for some rye whiskey barrels, and which they gladly extended their hand and allow me to buy. It was very nice of them. Could only buy like 20 barrels. I mean, very small order. Shipped them to Panama. We filled it with rum, and I never forget. I guess it was after 4 months. I went down to Panama, and Carlos came. He met me at my hotel, and he brought he had a liter that he had drawn from the barrel. We sat down, and we were both very interested because Don Baggio, I think, thought I was crazy, and I was a bit nervous. And we tried it, and we were both like, "Wow, okay, this is wow." We were just blown away. We loved it, and so yeah, that those Heaven Hill barrels and the rum, I felt just really just work together in a magical way, and which only got me more excited about the barrel series and doing finishes. But I do have a place in my heart for the rye finish. But I have to admit, that bottle you have is the last batch. And so the next small batch barrel series we did is in a small way. Actually, is this one. It hasn't hit the States yet. It's a Tennessee whiskey finish. And I'm going to talk about that because it's a bit funny.
All right. So
doesn't mean
I'm watching on Facebook right now. Grab the bottles of the rye finish. There might not be any more after what we have here on the shelf. So you just heard it.
Yeah, we're out of our warehouse in the US. So whatever the distributors have or stores have, that's it. I'm sure I'll do another rye finish. May not be the Heaven Hill down the road because I love it so much. But yeah, I wanted to do something different as well. So I'll be happy to talk about that one, but we're talking about rye instead.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is the one, because I always try to get whiskey drinkers to drink something else. Like, one, it stimulates your palate to drink different things anyways. And when you go back to what you used to drink, it seems more interesting. But also, like, some of the value you get in rum, the drinking experience can be very, very similar. This, to me, was the one that for me was like, that's it. That's the bridge over the gap between your bourbon and rye drinker to rum, because that rye flavor, like you said, rum is so receptive to these flavors, and the spice of the rye, that the sort of sweet flavors of the rum, they just blend beautifully. The proof point is spot on. Like, that drinks like a whiskey to me, and to use that in rum old fashions, rum Manhattan, any sort of rye based cocktail, that is perfect for cocktails.
Well, thanks. I mean, and talk about the rum old fashion. I love bourbon and rye old fashions, but there's something about a rum old fashioned that to me just is completely different and so good. And I think Grander does really well with the rum old fashioned, and I think the rye does. I know people that's all they love to drink. Even this 12-year-old, it's makes a great old fashioned, as the 8-year-old does as well. But that rye, I think you're right. I think that rye one, particularly for whiskey drinkers, is a wow aha moment of, and it's you get a lot of people. Yeah, they say it has a lot of those whiskey elements, but it's underpinned by that rum as well.
And then the last one, and then we'll talk about your future releases. this one here, which was the second one that I ever tried from you, the trophy release. I think we were in COVID and my sales rep happened to be here, ironically using this computer for a Zoom meeting with, the local, whoever brings that into them. And we had a sample of this during that tasting and he let me try it. And I said that I need this immediately in my store. This is just unbelievable. 110.4. For people who are looking for limited edition stuff, only 1,500 bottles in that batch. Doesn't get any more limited than that.
Yeah. The trophy release is, I love it to death. So I'll tell you what's behind the trophy release. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm down in Panama 4 times a year, and I'm constantly sampling rums. And what I have found, and this is my palate speaking only, is that I find the sweet spot for the ages of rums in Panama to be between 8 and 15 years of age. It doesn't mean that there's not good rum in Panama and you're younger than 8 or there certainly is, but consistently the 8 to 15 year of age rum to me is just, I find consistently a lot of interesting, really yummy stuff there. And so I have to also admit that I'm a fan of Booker's bourbon. And what I like about Booker's is they're coming out with a batch that is going to be different from time to time, but they're really trying to honor a high mark of delivering a flavor profile. The flavor will be different each time, but they're trying to deliver you should, when you buy a bottle of Booker's, you should be going, I know this is going to be a great bottle, a great buy. It's going to be different, but it's going to be great. And I'm trying to do that at the trophy release of I want to pick out some really interesting age rums between 8 and 15 years and create a small batch blend and bottle it up and sell it. And then the next release or next batch, I'm going to go out and find a new set of rums between 8 and 15 that just have a lot of flavor and batch that up and bottle it. And I want to keep doing that over and over. And I'm just in it. So, you're going to know it's grander. You're going to know there's shares of DNA, but it's going to just, I want that flavor profile to be more, not in your face, but just, I want it to be just exploding more in your mouth than maybe you'll get in some of the other expressions.
I also think, like, from my perspective, what's great about Booker's as a retailer, you pay $100 for a bottle and that's great. Why do you buy another one? Well, you buy another one because it's different than the last one you bought. And it's good for people to have that perspective of each batch is a little different. And it gives customers a reason to come back and buy that bottle again, because it's going to be good. You just don't know how it's going to be good, in what way. So yeah, I think it's a great concept to kind of keep people invested in the brand in those releases.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And what's fun for this is this was the first product that I'm doing the blending myself. So I'm choosing the rums that we ultimately will blend together. And so it's fun for me. But also it creates this incredibly amount of pressure on me as well. So it's a really fun process when I sit down trying to go through, I got a gazillion samples on my desk, and I'm just, doing a lot of blends and trying to find that right thing. And it's a really neat process. And knock on wood. So far, I've heard really good feedback on them, and it's we just bottled up our latest release as well, which I think turned out phenomenal. That's actually even smaller. I think it's it's less than even 800 bottles, I think. But I'm really excited about that. And actually, that's going to be, and so when I talk about, I go to the warehouse, I'm selecting 8 to 15-year-old rums. Some of it will just be straight age rums. Some of it's going to be finishes. So it's just, it could be, to me, anything in my warehouse is fair play, as long as it's 8 to 15. That's kind of the I guess the goalposts I put in place for myself.
So do you go into that process like this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a mouthfeel or a flavor profile, or do you let the aha moment come to you and go, I wasn't expecting that, but that's it right there. Like,
yeah, it's more, yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's more, the aha moment comes to me. I mean, I want to end with something that is just, wow, the mouthfeel, the flavor, everything is there. I mean, typically a lot of times what I'll do is when I'm tasting, if I find a barrel that I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is interesting, then I may use that as the base of, okay, I really like that. So now let me build around it. So that's really the kind of the strong foundation for my batch that I'm going to create. And then at that point, I'm going to find other rums that really, complement it or accentuate it, whatever the case may be. So that's usually the process that I'm after.
that is so delicious. And it's dangerous because it doesn't drink 110 either. Like
Mm-mm.
that drinks nice and soft.
And then typically my trophy release, there could be, I won't go lower than 100 proof. It's usually going to be 100 to 110, depending on what it is.
All
Again,
right,
I want to keep it at the bare minimum of 100. Just again, I
it's
guess you
more
never say
body
never.
to me
Yeah, I
at
think
that 100.
yeah,
Yeah, and I like that just a touch of a burn. It keeps the sweet flavors of rum, which aren't sweet, but they have those sweet sort
yeah.
of flavors. It keeps them sort of in check. It just keeps everything perfectly balanced. You mentioned there's a future release coming.
Yeah. So
So I
so
have a
the
customer who just messaged me asking about Antrim.
oh wow, okay. Yeah, that's that hasn't even come out yet. Very impressive.
Yeah, I've got some customers who like to go on deep dive. So there it is.
Yeah. So Antrim is we just bottled it. It's coming up. Should hopefully be in the States by the end of this month. So Antrim is interesting because it's actually it's a blend of 3 cask finishes.
Mhm.
The last limited release I did was a port. It was called port, and it was a port finish. I think we did blend of a couple of those casks, but I had one of those left, and so I set that aside. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but I also had 2 cognac casks that I had filled up, and so my intent always was to do a cognac straight release and a limited release with the cognac, but I have don't ask me why I did this, but I was playing around with the cognac, tasting it, and I added some of my port to it as well. And wow, I found it to be so incredibly interesting that I then decided that I'm going to do a limited release of blending the cognac and port together. Which is, I mean, I think kind of bizarre. I don't know. But I found it to be really, really tasty, really interesting. And the cognac we filled those casks with 8-year-old rum, and they sat in there for I think 9 months. And the port was filled with 10-year-old rum, and it sat in the port barrel just over a year. Bottled at 100 proof. And Antrim is, I picked that name because I'm like, what am I going to call this? And I found there's actually a gentleman back, an American back in the 20s who worked at the Manila Hotel in the Philippines in the 20s, mind you, and created a cocktail by blending cognac and port together and adding a little bit of sugar to it.
Interesting.
And they call it, or I found, I guess some people call it the Antrim. That was his last name. So kind of a nod to the cocktail that this gentleman made, the Antrim, by blending port and cognac together. So yeah. So yeah, that's just coming out. I'm trying to think. I haven't really talked much about that, so I'm really impressed with whoever came
Yeah,
across
no,
that. So
I've got some customers
kudos,
who
well done.
are rabbit hole people, and they love to do a
Yeah.
deep dive. So, which is also great. That means there's people out there watching us.
Yeah, well done. Nicely done. So yeah, I'm excited about it. It's very unique, very interesting.
And that is coming to the States.
It is, yeah, end of September. So we gotta get Horizon to bring some in and get some over to you. So that, yeah, I'm excited about that.
I'm excited about that now myself. All right, so what
In
was
terms
the other
of
new one you had there?
yeah, so this one also is coming over. So this, like I said, the rye finish is I don't know if that's coming over opposite or not, but that's a Tennessee whiskey finish, which is Jack Daniels. But funny story, I bought a, so Jack Daniels
So
is owned
can
by
you
Brown
actually use
Forman.
the name Jack Daniels? I
No,
know
I can't.
sometimes
No.
people have
No.
an NDA there, but
Yeah, no, I can't.
Hmm.
I'll talk about it because I bought the barrels, but I'm not gonna. You won't find it
you've done, yeah,
advertise. I don't advertise that,
Hmm.
but I the so Independent Stave does not make barrels for them, by the way. Brown Forman has their own cooperage and they have their own barrel making, but Independent Stave does buy some barrels from other people, and they have bought these. I'll be brutally honest. I'm not a Jack Daniels fan. I don't like Jack Daniels personally. I just the taste profile just, I don't dislike it. I don't think it's horrible. It's not something you'll find me drinking. And it's not because I'm from Kentucky. It's Tennessee. I just, the taste is just not for me. But I bought these barrels because I was quite intrigued just to try, because I like trying new stuff. And when I was tasting the barrels the first time, I was blown away. I could not believe how good these were. And because I do not like Jack Daniels, I'm like, I don't understand what happened here. This is so delicious. It added this really interesting sweetness to it that I was floored. And at that point, I'm like, settled. I've got to do a small batch of this. It's so good that I've got to come out with a bottle in it. And it really shocked me because, again, I'm not a Jack Daniels fan, so I wasn't really. But again, I also appreciate, just because I don't like it doesn't mean other people won't like it or whatever. That's why I like doing a lot of different stuff. But it just shocked me how much I loved it. It was one of my favorite barrels finishes that time around. I could not believe it. It was so good. So anyhow, I'm really excited about that coming out. And then
I can see
of
that
course
working too, because Jack Daniels has such a banana
yeah,
profile to me that flavor mixed into.
and I like bananas, so I guess
Yeah,
that's what happened there. But it's so good. I laugh every time I talk about it, just because of my my personal taste of Jack Daniels, and the fact that I won't knock that again. I mean, in fact, I'm trying to be buying more barrels of that. It's so good. And then of course, I've got all kinds of barrels I'm sitting down to do to Panama. And we do a lot of single barrels as well. So if if your clientele ever gets clamoring for single barrels, we'll have to talk. But that was another thing that the distillery Don Pancho, they had never done single barrels. They never bottled single barrels, and and it's so when I talked about the collaboration, the fact that they, I came to them and I said, look, I've, particularly in Kentucky and et cetera, I had people asking for single barrels, and I'm like, I want to do it. Can we do this? And sure, let's do it. So these single barrels are hand filled, by the way. The bottles are hand filled.
Wow.
They don't go through a line.
Wow.
They're too fearful that the line, they'll lose too much, and so they go through that. It's a bit interesting, and it's to me. So that I bottle these uncut and unfiltered is what I say. I mean, there is a level of filtration that does happen just to get the chunks of wood out. So, but that's it. So you'll find some of the single barrels that will have sediment at the bottom. So don't let that scare you off. In fact, I think it's. I'm trying to recreate as if you were down in Panama tasting directly from the barrel. So that's why I don't proof it down. We do extreme minimum filtration just so we don't have wood in it, big chunks of wood floating around. So I'm doing a lot of that. But one thing I'm really excited what I did, and it's probably not going to be ready till the earliest, probably not until later next year, is I bought brand new unused barrels that are lightly charred and heavily toasted.
Wow.
And I'm so excited about those because the toasting flavor of those barrels, and I actually did buy two barrels like that several years ago that I sold as single barrels, but the taste, the profile on that was so crazy that I decided I've got to buy more because I want to do probably a batch product of it and make it as a core lineup. I think. I mean, hopefully we'll see if it turns out as good as I think it does. I'll be probably coming out with a core product like that. If not, then maybe not. But I have high hopes for that. So I'm really excited about these barrels. And the barrel market has been really tough as well, particularly after COVID. There's been so much demand for barrels that if you aren't already buying new barrels, I mean, often if you call it up a Cooperage, are like, it's a 2-year waiting list. So I was fortunate enough to get these barrels and ship them down to Panama. So that's an exciting thing. But that's we're probably a year from that.
Awesome. Any other plans for the future? How about Amberana bourbon? Amberana seems to be the new cool kid in whiskey.
Those barrels?
Yeah.
Remind me, where are those barrels from?
They're from Brazil. It's a Brazilian teak wood that, from everybody I've talked to who has dealt with them, when you bring them in the room, the whole room smells of it. I've tasted rye whiskeys that were finished in Amberana. They taste like eggnog, like they impart the cinnamon, nutmeg, really rich flavor. But it seems to be the new cool kid on the whiskey side of things for finishing. I didn't know if you had.
I'll have to look into that. Well, I don't, not yet, but you've piqued my interest, so I'll have to check that out. I do have some Pinot de Charente barrels.
Nice.
So that I've got rum in those sitting. So I do have that going on. I'm talking to some people over in France about maybe getting some.
Calvados?
Well, I would like to get those, but not those. Armagnac barrels. So potentially doing that. Calvados as well. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm always, always looking. It's just finding. The challenge I have is I want to keep Grander rum. I mean, I know my rum is not a cheap rum, but it's also not the most expensive rum out there as well. I want to keep it within reason, and so some of these barrels, the cost, I mean, they're going up so high. So it's really, I'm trying to balance out doing stuff. But if I find something great, I also do it. It's just, it may have to be reflected a little bit in the price if it's, the barrel market is just, it's such a volatile market. I wish 5 years ago I had known. I would have bought stock in a barrel market somewhere.
Right. Especially with the bourbon movement. We talk about it all the time of, all these distilleries can amp up production, but where are they getting the trees to
The-
make more
yeah,
barrels? Especially in
they keep
bourbon, where you can
saying,
only use it once. Like,
yeah, and when I talked about the waiting list, the 2-year waiting list, they're saying it's not due to the lack of trees, it's labor.
hmm, yeah, that
And
too.
which is good to know. I mean, it's good to know that the raw material, I guess, is available, and they
Hmm,
keep saying that they're fine. I'm kind of like you. I don't know how that is, but
right.
it keeps working. But they said it's a labor issue for them.
Awesome. So no plans to sell out to Constellation, Diageo, or keeping this independent?
Nah, for the time being, man, I'm keeping it independent. I haven't had any knocks on the doors for some stupid stuff, but no, I'm having too much fun. This is, I think I have a lot, but this is still very much a small brand,
Hmm,
and so I'm in 11 states. That's it.
wow.
I'm not I'm not actively looking to build that out. I feel like there's still a lot of upside opportunity in those 11 states I'm in that I want to focus on. I don't have a big sales force behind me. I've got distributors behind me, but distributors there's so much out there. I mean, the
Right.
distributors are going to have a hard time. So yeah, so I'm a small guy still, and I love what I'm doing, and I'm having fun. I hope people, appreciate what I'm doing. I mean, obviously that's what keeps me going. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity just to focus in the markets I'm in and continue to grow it. And you know, I'll continue to expand. It's not that I'm not going to, but I think there's still a lot of focus in my markets right now that I want to continue to invest in.
Yeah, I think that's what I love about the brand. I think if somebody like a Diageo comes in, all of a sudden you're focused on a core product and your ability to experiment, and now you have to
Yeah.
source rum from other places to meet a whole market demand because they want to make money. So that's what I love about it. And I love the fact that you're just trying and doing and being crazy and creative and trying different things. It's awesome. It's what I love about the brand. It's why I wanted to do this. Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm excited
Well,
about the future and some of these new releases coming down too.
yeah. Well, I am too, and I appreciate. I'm glad we finally got together.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that people realize what a long road it was to get to
Yeah, it
this
was.
point.
We tried this multiple times. So hey, we made it, and I really appreciate your time, and I love sitting down and talking about it and the brand. And I'm sure there's a lot more out there, but I think we covered quite a bit, and it's being able to connect with you again and talk about it. And I hope the next time I'm in the market, I'll be able to see you as well.
Hopefully. Everything, you survived the hurricane and everything okay? Family's okay?
Yeah,
I know
so
that was
I
a
live.
scare there for a bit.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I mean, so we live in Orlando, so we escaped.
Mhm.
Last year we got hit, but I mean, I guess nowadays, this is par for the course. I mean, it seems like this is going to happen. But yeah, no, thank you. We made out fine. I mean, I guess the good news about living in Orlando is we're inland, so at least the storms that do hit us are going to be taken off, but they can still be wicked. And it's so it's always good, at least for Orlando. Of course, the people up in the Panhandle or in the corner of the bend, as they say, um, weren't so lucky.
All right. I have kept you for long enough. Hour and a half. That's awesome.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. I will let you get back to your day. Thank you again so much for doing this.
Well, thank you.
And for being patient with all the pitfalls that we've gone through. Yeah, we've had a bunch of people watching on Facebook. We're pushing the brand, and yeah, if you guys are watching on Facebook, all these bottles are open. Stop by and see me anytime. I can taste you guys on this stuff anytime. It's awesome. It's worth coming down and taking a taste. And thank you again, Dan, for being here. And yeah, hopefully next time you're in the market, we can kind of connect and hook up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like to taste some more and just tell some more stories. So hey, thanks again for having me, and I appreciate the interaction and the opportunity.
All right. Well, hopefully we talk soon.
All right, take care. All
All
right,
right. Thanks, Dan.
cheers. Bye.